Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk a bit about what is gender-based violence. And before I talk about that, I just want to say that within 1,000 women, we have a way of working that if you find yourself stuck in gender-based violence or domestic violence, that you just send us an orange heart and we will know how to respond. So that is to make it easier for women and men who find themselves in a situation of domestic violence, gender-based violence. Just send us an orange heart. So what is gender-based violence? It is violence that is directed at an individual based on their biological sex or their gender identity. And it includes physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse, threats, coercion, and economic or educational deprivation, whether it occurs in public or in private life. And it is unfortunately so that gender-based violence is disproportionately directed against women and girls. For this reason, you may find that the definition gender-based violence and violence against women and girls actually are interchangeably being used. And we focus more on actually violence against women and girls. So what is domestic violence? If we look at the Domestic Violence Act, which is Act number 116 of 1988. Domestic violence includes physical and sexual abuse, as well as emotional and psychological abuse that occurs within a domestic relationship. It also includes economic abuse, intimidation, harassment, stalking, damage to property, and entering a person's home without consent. Intimate partner violence is the most common form of gender-based violence, and it includes physical, sexual, and emotional abuse and controlling the behavior by a current or former intimate partner or spouse. And it can occur in heterosexual or same-sex couples. Now, the Domestic Violence Act, Act number 116 of 1988, how does the Act help? Well, it makes it the legal duty for the South African police to help victims of violence. This includes helping them to find suitable accommodation and medical help. They must explain the victim's rights to him or her and explain to them how to get a protection order. The Act makes a provision for a peace officer to arrest any person who may have committed an act of domestic violence and to seize any weapons from the premises. Applications for protection orders can also be made on behalf of the victim with their written consent. Now, to apply for protection order, the abused person must go to the police station and the local magistrate's office, where they will help you to complete your affidavit. The affidavit then goes to a magistrate or judge who considers the matter and can ask for more evidence. However, you can in the interim be issued an initial protection order. The initial protection order is normally an interim or temporary order with a return date, and that means that the respondent is given the chance to state his or her side of the story to the court and to reply to that. In the meantime, the applicant is given protection. And all of this gets more in detail explained when you do our longer gender-based violence course. Sexual violence is any sexual act, attempt to obtain a sexual act, unwanted sexual comments or advances, or acts to traffic or otherwise directed against a person's sexuality, using force, and by any person regardless of their relationship to the victim. And it's not only limited to home and work. Cyber violence is cyberbullying or cyber harassments are forms of bullying or harassment that include electronic means or platforms. And we see that more and more happen these days. Cyberbullying and cyber harassment is also known as online bullying and has become increasingly common, especially among teenagers. We have also found that the human traffickers tend to use a lot of cyber violence, or they recruit and groom their victims online. Cyber harassment relates to offending a person online with unwanted sexual explicit messages, threats of violence, or hate speech. And then what is structural violence? Structural violence is where violence is built into structures, appearing as unequal power relationships and consequently as unequal opportunities. And this normally happens in the workplace or in terms of where you rent a space from someone. Because what happens is there is an unequal advantage built into the social, political, and economic systems that govern our lives. Now, when you go to the police because you want to go and report violence within a relationship, whether it's sexual violence, whether the person has just threatened you, whether they made you feel unsafe, it's very important that when you go to the police that you remember that it's your right that they interview you in a private separate room. You do not have to make the statement over the counter when you go to the police. It's also your right that you can make a statement to a female police officer. If there's not one, then you need to decide or whether you're going to make it to a male or whether you actually ask them that they call a female police officer that you can speak to. The rest about gender-based violence will be dealt with in the longer gender-based violence course and training that's been done by 1,000 women. Please stay safe. I do want to say to women that find themselves in domestic violence, one of the biggest things that is necessary for you is to have a safety plan. Whether you decide that you want to get out, whether you decide I just want to go and speak to someone, whether you decide I need a protection order, it's important that you have a safety plan. And with a safety plan, I mean is, do you have a bag packed? Does your children know? Do your family know what your plans are? So that in the event that the alleged perpetrator finds out what your plans are, that you know that there are people that you can call with a code, you can send them the orange heart, and that will reach out to you immediately. Please, ladies, keep yourselves safe, because remember that gender-based violence, domestic violence, structural violence, it's all about power.